Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the English Daily Book Summary YouTube channel. In order to not stop learning, listen to an English book summary every day for free.
Anne Herman Nady and Ned Herman, The Whole Brain Business Book. Unlocking the Power of Whole Brain Thinking. Every team includes smart, capable people, but that doesn't guarantee they'll work well together. The key reason frequently lies in how people think differently. This difference in perspective means what seems clear to one person might feel irrelevant or confusing to someone else. One leader might zero in on facts and data. Another focuses on the plan. Someone else pays attention to relationships, while another sees endless possibilities no one else has considered. None of these approaches are wrong, but when thinking differences go unrecognized, they can lead to frustration, miscommunication, and missed opportunities. These thinking differences follow predictable patterns. Everyone has mental habits and preferences, ways of approaching problems that feel natural, and other styles that take more effort. These preferences shape careers, teamwork, leadership, innovation, and even personal development. And while most people tend to lean heavily on their strongest styles, the best performers and the best organizations know how to stretch their thinking when the situation calls for it. In this blink, you'll learn how to recognize your own thinking preferences and how those differences play out in teams and leadership. You'll also discover how organizations can stimulate creativity and innovation by working with the full range of human thinking. And finally, we'll look at how great leaders apply different thinking styles to navigate complexity and change, and how individuals can develop new skills by stretching beyond their mental comfort zones. Let's start by exploring how thinking preferences form, how they affect your work, and why understanding them is the foundation for doing better business. Thinking preferences shape the way you work. Do you ever wonder why some people excel at analytics but struggle with creativity? Your brain may be the most valuable asset you own in business, and understanding how you prefer to think can unlock unprecedented performance gains. This is where the whole brain model comes in. Developed by Ned Herman at General Electric in the 1970s, this groundbreaking framework emerged from his research into brain specialization and thinking preferences. Based on EEG experiments and decades of subsequent validation, the model shows how our thinking naturally falls into 4 distinct patterns or quadrants. First is the A quadrant, the analyzer, where logic, facts, and numbers reign supreme. This is where critical thinking and financial calculations happen. Next is the B quadrant, the organizer, a space ruled by planning, structure, and details. This area covers schedules, processes, and careful implementation. Then there's the C quadrant, the personalizer, centered on people, feelings, and interpersonal dynamics. Empathy, communication, and emotional understanding flourish here. Finally, the D quadrant, the strategizer, holds imagination, innovation, and big-picture vision. Strategy, future possibilities, and creative solutions emerge in this space. Think about your own mind for a moment. Which quadrant feels most natural to you? Just as you have stations you frequently tune into on the radio, you likely have thinking preferences you automatically default to. These preferences form early and grow stronger over time. When you receive praise for analytical abilities, you're likely to develop those skills further, potentially at the expense of other thinking styles. That's why a brilliant financial analyst might struggle with brainstorming sessions, or why a visionary leader might feel drained by detailed planning. Interestingly, certain professions attract specific profiles. Accountants typically favor A quadrant thinking, while designers often prefer D quadrant approaches. At the personal level, working with your natural preferences brings energy and satisfaction. But the real magic happens when you develop situational wholeness, the ability to tap into any thinking quadrant when circumstances demand it. Step back to the team level, and the impact multiplies. Groups that blend diverse thinking styles consistently outperform homogeneous groups when tackling complex problems. They see challenges from multiple angles and generate more robust solutions. When someone strong in analysis partners with someone skilled in relationship building, the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. Looking ahead, the ability to recognize and harness different thinking styles is invaluable. In the next section, you'll see how these thinking differences directly affect your bottom line through enhanced communication, collaboration, and productivity. Cognitive diversity drives business performance. Most management frustrations can be traced to a single source: thinking differences among team members. What you may see as stubbornness, incompetence, or even sabotage might simply be a teammate operating from a completely different mental framework. Now that you've seen how thinking preferences shape individual behavior, let's explore how they impact team dynamics, communication, and business performance. This is where cognitive diversity moves from an interesting concept to bottom-line results. One place where those thinking differences show up right away is in how you manage others. This is because your management style often mirrors your preferred way of thinking. A-quadrant managers focus on facts and analysis, often appearing all business in their interactions. B-quadrant managers, meanwhile, prioritize procedures and details, creating structure and predictability. Next, C-quadrant managers emphasize relationships and emotional engagement, building connection with their teams. And finally, D-quadrant managers value big-picture vision and innovation, sometimes at the expense of details. Most managers employ a combination of these styles, but trouble arises when communication breaks down between opposing preferences. Consider a logical, data-driven financial manager attempting to work with a creative, conceptual marketing director. Without understanding their fundamental thinking differences, they may attribute disagreements to personality conflicts rather than recognizing complementary strengths. Teams face similar challenges. Homogeneous teams with similar thinking preferences reach consensus quickly, but often produce conventional solutions. Diverse teams, on the other hand, initially struggle with alignment, but then produce more innovative, comprehensive results. Research shows that balanced teams are 66% more efficient at solving complex problems. Job alignment matters just as much. Employees experience higher productivity and satisfaction when their work matches their thinking preferences. They can develop competencies in non-preferred areas, but it requires more energy and motivation. One study found potential productivity gains of 30% when work and thinking preferences align properly. Influencing others follows the same pattern. A-quadrant thinkers want data and logical presentations, while C-quadrant thinkers respond to personal connection and emotional engagement. B-quadrant thinkers need detailed processes and timelines, and D-quadrant thinkers look for possibilities in big-picture context. Even learning and development approaches must account for these differences. When training design matches diverse thinking styles, learning outcomes improve dramatically. One university implemented whole brain teaching and saw grades improve by a whopping 30%. The business implications are clear. Organizations that understand and leverage cognitive diversity gain significant competitive advantage. They communicate more clearly, build stronger teams, place talent where it fits best, and connect better with customers. In the next section, we'll explore how leaders can apply these principles to navigate complexity and lead change. Leadership thinking must evolve with complexity. Even with a triple bypass surgery staring them in the face, 90% of patients fail to change their lifestyle habits. This figure shows how hard real change is, in personal habits and in the way companies operate. Now that you've learned how thinking styles impact teams and profits, let's look at how leaders can leverage whole brain thinking to spark change. To do so, leaders need situational wholeness. This is the ability to shift between all four quadrants as events shift. A study of 9,300 CEOs worldwide revealed that successful leaders typically display balanced thinking preferences across analytical problem-solving, organized implementation, interpersonal engagement, and strategic visioning. As leaders move up through what's called the leadership pipeline, the way they need to think changes dramatically. Early-stage managers rely most on organizational and detail-oriented thinking. At the next level, managing people becomes more important, requiring stronger interpersonal skills. And at the top, senior leaders need to think strategically and operate with a big-picture view. Throughout every stage, though, analytical thinking remains a constant. Understanding these different thinking needs at various levels helps us look closer at specific skills. Strategic thinking, which uses mostly D-quadrant mental processes, must come before strategic planning. Many leaders struggle here because their analytical preferences drive them to jump straight to planning without first engaging in broader conceptual thinking. Techniques like metaphorical thinking and creative modeling can help leaders develop this vital capacity. Beyond specific skills, leaders face challenges during times of change and disruption, and it's in such situations where they revert to their comfort zone. For example, economic downturns typically trigger narrow A-B quadrant responses, focused on cutting costs rather than pursuing opportunities. Different thinking styles also respond differently to change. Analytical thinkers worry about ambiguity. Organizational thinkers fear unpredictability. Interpersonal thinkers may overreact emotionally, and conceptual thinkers fear loss of freedom. These different reactions surface in real situations. Take reorganizations and mergers, for example. These frequently fail when leaders overemphasize financial and implementation considerations while neglecting human impact and future vision. One bank merger succeeded specifically because leaders assembled a team with balanced thinking preferences across all quadrants, resulting in no forced layoffs while still achieving integration goals. But perhaps the most challenging leadership barrier of all remains deeply ingrained mindsets, those mental maps that filter how we see the world. Effective leaders understand these filters both in themselves and others, adapting their communication and approach to address the specific concerns of each thinking style. By developing truly whole-brain leadership capabilities, executives can successfully navigate even the most complex business challenges while bringing their entire organizations along with them. In the next section, you'll explore how to tap into breakthrough thinking for innovation. Innovation depends on expanding how you think. A remarkable 75% of people believe they aren't living up to their creative potential. This disconnect between inherent ability and actual practice represents one of the greatest untapped resources in business today. Now that you've explored how leaders navigate complexity, let's examine how organizations can systematically harness breakthrough thinking to drive innovation. How does creativity actually work? It doesn't happen by accident. It's a process that unfolds in distinct stages, each drawing on different types of thinking. The most productive creative work follows a whole-brained, iterative pattern that moves through 6 key steps. It begins with interest, a spark of curiosity or motivation that creates the energy to engage with a problem. From there, preparation takes over, as you gather information, explore possibilities, and immerse yourself in the challenge. This is where research, learning, and framing the problem happen. Once the groundwork is laid, the brain enters incubation, a quieter phase where ideas percolate in the background, often while doing unrelated activities like walking or resting. This allows unconscious connections to form. The result is illumination, the familiar aha moment, where a new idea suddenly comes into focus. But creativity doesn't end there. The next step is verification, where critical thinking and analysis test the idea's viability and refine it. Finally, application puts the idea into action, translating creative thought into real-world results. This process involves different brain states, and knowing when you personally experience those states can help you capture your best ideas. Even brain research shows different states support creativity. Alert, focused thinking happens when active. When your mind slows, relaxed reflection occurs. Your most surprising ideas often emerge when you're drifting, daydreaming, or just waking up. Noticing these moments and capturing ideas before they disappear matters. Tapping into personal creative moments matters. Supporting individual creative moments is one part. Removing organizational roadblocks is another. Many organizations create barriers to creativity without realizing it. They label certain roles as creative, while others are considered purely analytical. They dismiss new ideas with killer phrases like, "We've tried that before." Most damaging is when leadership calls for innovation, while management enforces risk-averse policies. Overcoming these barriers and building a climate for creativity requires deliberate effort. At Brown-Forman, makers of Jack Daniel's whiskey, teams learned to redefine problems and make unexpected connections. At global hotel company IHG, project managers strengthened their creative muscles through drawing exercises and improvisation classes, changing traditional project management into a more adaptive approach. Applying these approaches helps make creativity part of the work. When creativity is part of the work, every job can benefit from creative thinking. Using our natural creative abilities and building supportive company cultures allows access to thinking that brings real innovation. Personal growth requires developing new thinking skills. Children rarely struggle with new technology because they haven't built mental walls that prevent adaptation. Unlike adults who resist unfamiliar operating systems or interfaces, kids simply dive in without preconceptions or frustration. That same openness is what adults need to reclaim when learning new skills. This is where the idea of claiming mental space comes in, consciously working to build capabilities in the areas of thinking you tend to avoid. For example, an executive who naturally excels at analytical problem-solving and strategic thinking might realize that their low preference for interpersonal engagement is holding them back, affecting leadership, relationships, and team connection. By deliberately working on empathy and communication skills, they can expand their effectiveness while staying true to their core strengths. This kind of development shows that people can change. Research suggests approximately 70% of who we are comes from nurture, our experiences, rather than nature. This offers tremendous hope for personal development. Key triggers for change include personal desire, job changes, parenthood, value shifts, significant learning, job loss, and mentoring relationships. To make these changes lasting, old mindset barriers often need addressing, and doing so requires a whole brain approach. First, analytical thinking helps define and analyze the mindset. Then, challenge assumptions and explore alternatives through experimental thinking. At the same time, consider emotional aspects and seek support via relational thinking. Organizational thinking then helps develop practical action plans. Such a whole brain approach can be particularly helpful for those with entrepreneurial aspirations, where understanding your thinking preferences is especially valuable. Successful entrepreneurs typically show strong visionary and risk-taking thinking, with a particularly high preference for experimental, big-picture ways of thinking. If your profile differs, partnerships can provide complementary strengths. To help overcome self-limiting beliefs that can hinder growth, consider creating your own personal permission certificate that explicitly authorizes you to explore new mental territories. This visual reminder helps overcome the self-limiting beliefs that often prevent growth. Pair this with dedicated physical and psychological space where you can practice new skills without judgment or interruption. The ability to recognize, value, and harness different thinking styles ultimately creates better outcomes, whether in business decisions, relationships, or personal growth. By understanding your own thinking preferences and stretching beyond them, you unlock potential not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. The main takeaway of this Blink to the Whole Brain business book by Anne Herman Nady and Ned Herman is that grasping and applying different thinking styles is key for better individual results, teamwork, leadership, and sparking innovation. Everyone has preferred ways of thinking, often falling into patterns like analytical, organizational, interpersonal, or strategic. Recognizing these differences helps avoid miscommunication and apply cognitive diversity for better problem-solving and business results. Effective leaders adapt their thinking to the situation because innovation thrives when all styles are engaged. By consciously developing less familiar thinking skills, you can overcome personal limitations and achieve significant growth, improving your effectiveness at work and beyond. Okay, that's it for this Blink. We hope you enjoyed it. If you can, please take the time to leave us a rating. We always appreciate your feedback. See you in the next Blink.